Hello and welcome to our We Are Power May webinar or Way webinar, who knows? It is half term week, isn't it? After all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We love hosting these monthly conversations with a wonderful panel. And today I'm going to be providing insights and guidance for our wonderful community who are struggling with burnout or looking for those strategies and coping mechanisms to improve that physical and mental well-being and everything else that goes alongside that, because there is no just one route to solve this. And we always want you to take away some actionable insights. So we love creating and framing the conversation, but we want you to be able to take things away as well, and also to input as well. So hopefully you can see on your screen, whether you're joining us on YouTube or Twitter, you should be able to see like the little chat. Please add any of your questions in as you go. And we've just done a poll because we wanted to know you, and we wanted to ask, what do you think is the best way that you like to combat burnout? And the majority of you shared that setting boundaries was the best way to combat burnout, followed by practicing self-care and seeking support. And I think that the practice of that self-care, the practice of that harmony, and the practice of that asking for help is something that we will get into today. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from our stellar panel of Natalie, Alicia and Martina, who I'll throw you to in a second. But please do join the conversation. And also, I would love for you to tell us what are sort of your 3 words as to how you would describe burnout. So you in the chat, let us know where you're from today. Let us know where you are out there and watching or catching up from. But tell us what you think the 3 words are that describe burnout. And whilst you're pondering that, let me throw to our fantastic panel of Natalie, Alicia and Martina, who I'm going to throw to just to introduce themselves. Natalie, can I start with you?
Yeah, so I'm Natalie. I'm from Empower Wellbeing. I'm the manager there, and Empower Wellbeing is a social enterprise which focuses on making wellbeing accessible to all demographics across the Northeast.
Welcome, and congratulations on our future list this year as well, Natalie. Welcome. Alicia, welcome from the wonderful Thrive Law multi-award winning Thrive Law over in Leeds.
Yeah, that's us. So hi, my name's Alicia Collinson. I'm a senior associate at Thrive Law. So Thrive is predominantly an employment law firm, but we're a little bit more special than that because we do a lot of focus in wellbeing, ED&I support, strategic support, and obviously we do a lot of training in areas around mental health and wellbeing and trying to make sure that our clients are like healthy and happy employers when they can be.
Amazing. Thank you. And Martina, welcome. Award-winning also, Martina. You are everywhere at the moment. You are the perfect person to have on this panel today as well. So I'm like, come on, I need to have some of what you've got, Martina.
Well, no, it's great to be here. So yeah, I'm Martina Witter, based in Manchester, from Rafa Therapy and Training Services. So we're a health and wellbeing consultancy. We help organisations and individuals to weather the storms of business and life by building resilience, improving performance, productivity and well-being. And it's great to be here on this wet afternoon in the UK.
Well, in fact, actually, my full disclosure, actually, as we were saying in the green room prior to this, is I am trying desperately to manage my own personal harmony, stroke well-being, stroke all of those things. And I'm actually in a mobile office, if you like, in Spain at the moment. So I can't agree with the rain thing. I'm really sorry. Please, none of you, you're all going to turn off now, aren't you? Don't do that. I'm going to bring it home. I'm flying home tonight, so I will bring some calmer weather back with us. So promise. And please, thank you for starting to jump into the chat about where you are. Maybe let's not talk about the weather. Let's just talk about where you are and your 3 words that potentially define burnout. Alicia, what are some of those causes, and how do we even know that we've got burnout?
So burnout's actually really interesting because the World Health Organization says that it is like specifically associated with an it is an occupational phenomenon. So it only happens in relation to kind of what you do for a living. And it's effectively, burnout is like that state of physical and emotional exhaustion. And it's different from stress in that it is almost the next step from stress. If we think about, it means that you are no longer like able to function, able to be productive or like contribute at work. The main cause is going to be like your work-related stress, your work-related impact, but then you're going to add in your life factors as well and your own resilience levels. Different people are going to be more predicated to burnout than others are. In terms of how do we know we have it? Well, the main thing people struggle with is identifying when is it burnout and when is it just straightforward fatigue, like when are you just exhausted. And I think the main difference between the two is thinking about how you're feeling about work as opposed to just how you're feeling about overall life. So if you've got burnout as opposed to just feeling fatigued, you're going to be procrastinating, you're going to feel really overwhelmed, you're going to have a really negative or cynical outlook, as opposed to if we're talking about fatigue, you're just tired. I say just tired as the parent of a 2-year-old. There's no such thing as just tired, but you are, that's the kind of distinction between the thing. And so ultimately burnout is more than just my job is stressful. It is, I am completely overwhelmed and uncomfortable at the prospect of my work, and it is impacting everything that I do and everything that I feel.
Wow. So that's interesting. You talk about this sort of burnout and almost it's the difference between, or the early warning system before stress. What do you think are some of those early signs, Martina, that were on that direction towards burnout?
I guess some of the early signs that you're on the heading towards burnout is just not enjoying your job, feeling distance from it, noticing that you're just disengaged, maybe in terms of your workload and the demands, you're struggling to meet those targets, struggling to meet those KPIs, which many organizations have. And some individuals may just notice that maybe you get up in the morning and you just don't want to show up for work, whether that's showing up for work at home in your office, or whether you're working from, or whether you're actually going into your physical office. There's also a sense of increased hopelessness, and you're just not finding enjoyment in your working relationships. But what's important to notice is, and to acknowledge, is that with burnout and those early signs, that they're incremental. It doesn't just happen overnight. You know, you notice that you're burnt out, but it's a gradual process to kind of maybe looking out and noticing whether your sleep patterns have potentially changed, and gradually over time that you're just feeling depleted of energy, and it's incremental, and then that's when that burnout arises. And also just some individuals just don't feel confident as well in their work. So it's those incremental behavioral changes, cognitive changes, your mindset, your concentration as well, and just your beliefs about work in general.
And it's that separation, isn't it? How do you separate it from that every day? Alicia talked about, I've got a 2-year-old, I'm sleep deprived. It's how do you separate it from the everyday? Is it stresses around, sort of money? Is it stresses around relationships? How do you know it's not in that?
So with burnout, as Alicia shared earlier, it is limited and focused to work, your occupation, maybe working relationships, whereas with stress, that can be pervasive. It could be due to financial worries, it could be due to relationships, it could be due to physical health, just a wide range of kind of stressors or triggers. But burnout is solely related to workplace, your occupation, and that's the main distinction. But some of the symptoms may differ, and that's why, as a manager or a leader or just family members, you've got to be able to, I guess, understand what are the triggers, what are the cues, because that will determine the support that's needed.
This is really helpful, actually, sort of, we talk about, you only have to look at LinkedIn or an Instagram post and you see the words being thrown about all the time, don't you? Burnout, stress, fatigue, you can sort of throw that all over. So this is a really great place to start for us, isn't it? Is that real kind of, how do I identify where am I at this moment? And Natalie, your work is all about well-being. Why is your work centered around this? Because it's very important, isn't it, to focus on that physical and mental well-being?
Yeah, so it's important to focus on building positive physical and mental well-being, because essentially it's vital to live in a happy life. And we've all heard the phrase, you can't pour from an empty cup, meaning you can't give your energy to other aspects of your life unless you're looking after yourself first. So you can't expect to be your best if you're not looking after yourself. It's likely you're not going to be the best performer in your team at work if you're not getting your 8 hours sleep at night. You can't expect to have the best relationships with your family and friends if you're not taking that time out for yourself to maybe be mindful or to recharge. And I think it's very easy to get wound up in our everyday tasks and let our well-being fall down our priority list. But if we're letting it fall too far and we don't take breaks and we don't take that time out to look after our well-being, that's when we become burnt out or run down and ill. Basically, if you don't schedule a break for well-being, your body will take a break for you, and it probably won't be at a convenient time. And if it does happen and you do become burnt out, it puts our tasks into perspective, and the focus then becomes looking after our well-being, because that is the most important thing, not only for ourselves, but also for our success at work and our relationships, because you can't really achieve a lot without having that foundation of well-being and health. So our aim should be to avoid burnout or becoming run down, and any time lost from that, and take proactive steps to look after our physical and mental well-being and gain success off the back of that. Because really, looking after your well-being helps you to feel good about yourself, which boosts your confidence to learn new skills and visit new places, make new friends. And then the good self-esteem that comes from that helps you cope when life takes a difficult turn, if it does, and be comfortable asking for help when needed too. So all of that combined makes for a really positive, collaborative and efficient work and personal life.
And if we look at that, the actual connectivity between that burnout and performance, has that manifested itself throughout your career, Martina?
I guess at times it has, and I would say more so when I've been working in the past online as a therapist for an organisation and for myself. I mean, at the time, I probably wouldn't have even referred to it as burnout, probably because I'm always so busy juggling lots of responsibilities. But there was a time that I acknowledged that it was just taking me a lot longer to make decisions. There was a bit more procrastination, and some of the processes that I had to follow just felt slightly more overwhelming. And that was because I did feel quite depleted at times of energy. And if we are, if we're exhausted and we've got no energy, then it affects you cognitively, it affects your decision making. It stops you from being creative, and it also it instills a sense of anxiety and self-doubt. So you're questioning yourself and overthinking rather than just actioning a task. So for me, at times, I guess in the past, it's affected my productivity. That's how it's affected me essentially. And also just not feeling connected to the job, feeling slightly disengaged, and that lack of reward or enjoyment from the role that I've been doing. For me, that they were the kind of telltale signs of burnout.
And if you've got that disconnectivity, then your performance is naturally not going to be on its A game, is it? So Alicia, top tips. We love any top tips here, but what are the ones that you've been able to bring into practice? Specifically maybe at the start, when we talk about that prevention piece.
Yeah, so I think my most important thing that I always tell myself is that self-care is not selfish. I think we can sometimes, especially if we're juggling lots of things or we're really busy at work, or for example, again, thinking about like if you've got balancing children or balancing other caring responsibilities, you can sometimes think, well, actually spending time on the things that make me better, or the things that help me focus on the things that I need in my life. Actually, I can't prioritize that. But I think sometimes coming back to actually that idea of self-care isn't selfish. It's about investing the time now so that you don't burn out later. And I think what I've found, if you've never sat down before and figured out like what your stress factors are and what your kind of red flags are, and then how that kind of manifests itself, it's really worth like investing some time either doing that personally or doing that with someone else who knows you really well, like maybe even a colleague, saying, when I'm stressed, what am I like? Can you start to see that in me, and what do I need to therefore take away from that, and doing that kind of unpicking exercise with other people as well. Ask your husband, like, what am I like when I'm stressed? How does that kind of manifest in me? And have you noticed anything that maybe I haven't noticed that either causes that or calms me down? And starting to unpick what that self-care looks like for you. So like for me, like exercise is one of my go-tos. I have to exercise, otherwise I just feel my brain just doesn't function as well. And then the other thing I think is starting to then use that skill to recognize it in others. If we think about burnout is an occupational phenomenon, it happens at work. That means that part of the reason why it's so important to kind of mitigate it against it is because if someone else burns out, let's face it, that's going to impact you, that's going to impact your wider team. If you're a manager, that's going to impact your employees. So then also doing that extra exercise where you start to think about, what does that look like in other people? Do they know? Do I know? So at Thrive, we have what we call a license to thrive. It's really cheesy, but we have our licenses to thrive, and we all have individual documents that say, you know, these are my stress factors. This is what I'm like when I'm stressed. This is how you might be able to snap me out of it. This is how you might be able to help, or this is what you need to encourage me to do. Because if you're really, really deep in something, someone just saying, actually, you need to go and take a break, this is what you said will help, I'm actioning that for you now, really, really helps. So we have these documents that we have already prepared that everyone across the team can share and everyone across the team can see. And starting to build that across the team as well really then helps you support other people and reduce their chance of burnout, which in turn kind of reduces all the stress levels across the team, which is really helpful. So there's a few of my like real top tips there.
And I think I want to stay on that because I think that's brilliant, because you always want people to take away something that they can do. Have you been doing that for a number of years, or is that new, this document?
No, we've had it since I started. So we actually had it starting out because I have reasonable adjustments because I have severe anxiety. So we started it out as a document that just shares like the reasonable adjustments I have, but we didn't want it to just be me and mine. So then we expanded it to everyone so that there's not like a signpost on the people who are neurodivergent or who do have mental health conditions. Everyone has one, whether you're neurotypical or whether you're mentally healthy or whatever it is. And so it kind of expanded from there. And we have all kinds of other stuff in there, like what hours we work or how we like to communicate. But one of the big points that we really focus on is like, what are our stress triggers? Obviously also working in employment law, there can sometimes be actual triggers in like cases that we handle. So we have them set out as well in terms of the cases that we might not be in. If we're not in a good place, we might not want to run ourselves and things like that. So yeah, they're great. We're so proud of them. They work so well. And they're a really good leveler for new employees as well, because they come in and they know who everyone is. We have cheesy things in there, like I have a page dedicated to Ryan Reynolds. It's a long story, but so it's kind of a bit of a good like introduction to the team as well, especially when you work remotely.
But surely this is one of those things that makes you who you are. We talk, and it's always fascinating. We do the webinars and we could start off talking about imposter syndrome, or we're talking about advocacy, and give everything phrases, don't we? When everything is kind of interchangeable. Ultimately, this is the guide. What a simple guide to say, show up at work and bring your whole selves, because actually it's in the book, right? I need to come back. I don't want it to all be about the book, but I find this fascinating because it's really practical. What about those individuals who maybe think that, oh, I don't want to do that. That feels a bit awkward. I don't want to write that stuff down.
Yeah, so I think because we've already broken the barriers, because we all have them. So all the way from like top level managing partner, there is that kind of like leading from the front and leading in terms of what we think is crucial from an information perspective. It's part of your onboarding. You have to do it, even if you don't want to. You can do it on very, very base level. Like you can literally just say, I sometimes get stressed when I have lots to do. And you're like, well, that's nice. We'll expand on that over time. But we do try and like recruit from a kind of mental well-being in mind, thinking about those people who respect those values. It's something really crucial to thrive. So I'd be really surprised if we had someone who came on and who said, you know, they don't want to articulate that yet. If it was for a reason that they want it to be confidential, we'd unpick that later. But realistically, it's kind of, because it is, everyone does it. There's not a kind of, everyone answers the same questions, everyone does it the same structure. I think it's kind of just accepted as part and parcel of who we are, and we can constantly update them as well. So if you wanted to be really vague at first, and then 6 months later when you found your feet, figured out who you're working with, you want to add in more, or you've noticed more things, you can just keep updating it and let people know when you've done that.
Brilliant. And I'd love any of you watching now, I'd love to know if you've got any questions or you doing something similar like that, because I think that is brilliant, because that very much comes with a proactive mindset, doesn't it? Of kind of do this right from the start before it's too late. And Natalie, you know, we've already talked about physical, mental well-being, but how have you got any top tips about how to practice that sort of self-care or putting things in place to help when you've actually got to that feeling of burnout?
So coming from Nouveau Wellbeing, which is an organisation focused on promoting physical wellbeing, my go-to self-care tip is always move your body. I personally don't think there are a lot of things that keeping active can't help in some way, especially when it comes to mental health. And I know it sounds like the last thing you want to do if you're already tired or feeling lethargic, but it doesn't have to be high intensity gym sessions or long runs. It's just about finding what you enjoy so that you want to do it and that you stick to it. For me personally, that was yoga. Like, yoga changed my whole mindset and love for exercise. It's a lower intensity and can be really relaxing as well. So it's a great mindful experience at the same time. So I would suggest just putting on yoga, like a yoga class video on YouTube at the end of the day. There's loads of really great ones on there and loads of ones for beginners if you've never tried it before. And it'll help you to move your body, unwind, switch off from your day, and whilst taking very easy steps to prevent burnout. Another tip that I have to practice self-care to avoid burnout would be to set yourself allocated self-care time each day. I work remotely, so when I'm busy and I have no distractions from people in an office around us, I can understand how people can get tunnel vision and work all day without taking a break. So to avoid that and burnout that could be caused by doing this consistently, I like to stick to pretty rigid break schedules. So I'll purposely block out time on my calendar each day for breaks or self-care, and I'll force myself to take them. And I usually like to spend that time to go for a walk because I'm moving my body, giving my mind a break, fresh air, vitamin D at the same time. So come back feeling refreshed. But that could be spent doing whatever you like. So you could block out 30 minutes to read a book or spend some time on a hobby, 15 minutes on a morning to meditate, just basically doing something that you enjoy for yourself and make a positive habit of doing it every day. And that way you become accustomed to making time for yourself a non-negotiable, and to prevent burnout and improve your well-being consistently. And one other thing I found really helps create that time for self-care and prevent burnout is to turn off all your notifications on your phone. I don't think self-care has to be like put on a face mask, have a bath. I think sometimes it's just dedicating time to not thinking about work or life admin or things to do with your kids if you've got them, and just putting yourself first for you. So to help with that, I have no push notifications for social media or emails come through on my phone. So I'll only check my phone on my laptop if I have the time and I'm ready to respond both mentally and physically. And I do this because I'd find myself checking work emails in my personal time, and then I'd be spending all my time thinking about what I need to do, and that would eat into my self-care and time that I could be spent doing things that I love. And there's no point checking it anyway, because I'm just thinking about it on a night and getting stressed about it, and it's not making the task be done any faster. It's just stressing us out. So I would say turn off your notifications and remove distractions to create that time for self-care. But if you're not up for that, at least log off at the end of each day, put your work phone, if you have one, on a do not disturb, and make sure that you're making a conscious effort to make your time be yours for as long as you can.
And I want to come back to technology in a bit, because I did on Friday. I turned notifications off for the first time. Didn't even know how to do it. But I was on a big walk outside time, and literally I knew all these advice was coming. So I was like getting myself outside, getting myself on a walk, and I'm like, I couldn't stop myself looking at the team's notifications or the Outlook. So I thought, oh, I think I can do this, like 10 years into running a business. But it worked. It did help, because otherwise it's so easy to kind of jump in, and then actually you end up interfering my team are listening to this now going, hell yeah, but you do, because you think, oh gosh, I don't want to slow any down. I don't want to stop, but actually I found that great for me. And that was the first time I'd ever done it, which is ridiculous. So there's my top tip. It's never too late. But I do want to come back to technology in a little while, because there is so much out there, and how can we use technology for good? So I'll come back to that in a second, if I may. But Martina, you found Black Mental Wealth, a platform for Black and mixed heritage individuals to challenge mental health stigma and provide culturally appropriate solutions. And I know when we put the poll out last week, I think one of our wonderful community out there, Nicola, talking to her, she was talking about that intersectionality that comes with burnout as well. There's no just one, oh, I'm burnt out, the end. This is me at this phase. It's different. And as we know, intersectionality can make so many differences, whether we're talking about menopause, whether we're talking about neurodiverse individuals. How does this work? How does this work within intersectionality within burnout and well-being?
So it's a really powerful question. I'm glad that it's been included in today's session, webinar. This is something I'm really passionate about. So I'm going to talk about my lived experience, and then also clients that I've worked with. So when we look at mental health, well-being and burnout, a lot of the research highlights that individuals from the global majority are less likely to access mental health or well-being support from organizations, mainstream organizations, because of there's a stigma in the Black community around mental health and well-being, and then there's also a fear of being listened to, and there's a mistrust as well of services. So all of that has an impact upon the support that individuals would receive or would ask for in terms of burnout. And for me, as a Black British Jamaican female from the global majority, when that's your background, your mindset is that one of the common phrases that you're exposed to is, you've got to work double hard to succeed. And I would say double, but maybe 10 times as hard or 100 times. But those thoughts and those mindsets, those assumptions or beliefs that you're exposed to in your early life, and I would say not just early life, throughout your whole adult life, your lifespan, some of those beliefs actually contribute towards burnout, because you believe that you've always got to be working excessively hard. You've got to give 100 and 200% to succeed. So unfortunately, that would contribute towards burnout and makes you more susceptible. And even if you are feeling burnout, it's like it can be normalized, unfortunately. So that's something to be mindful of when you're maybe supporting individuals from diverse backgrounds, and the way that burnout the way that it might be expressed, or the signs that might be noticed, can be different as well. So that's something just to be mindful of in some of the conversations. And in terms of Black mental wealth and kind of raising awareness of mental health and well-being within different communities, the Black and mixed heritage communities, one of the reasons why I felt that I needed to create this platform was because there's such a huge stigma, unfortunately, in the community around mental health, and generally people view seeking support for mental health as something negative. It's synonymous with weakness. So maybe if you're struggling with your mental health, maybe with anxiety, depression, or with burnout, or just not coping with the demands of life, that would indicate that you're maybe weak as an individual, and you don't want to come across as weak, because, and I'm saying this now, and I'm actually, this relates to me as well. I need to take my own advice. But there is this this stereotype of the strong Black woman. You can do everything. Yes, you can. But it's not helpful, because it creates a lot of problems in terms of burnout. So you've just got to stop, and you've got to be intentional and ensure that you do have time for your well-being. And certain organizations also create safe spaces where there is, that non-judgmental safe space where individuals from different backgrounds can just explore their experiences in terms of burnout and mental health. And my original background was working in the NHS. So I worked in the NHS for over 10 years in the mental health and wellbeing space, and latterly working as a cognitive behaviour therapist. And I worked in very diverse areas. However, in terms of referrals and individuals that from diverse backgrounds that I worked with, the numbers were quite low. And unfortunately, that is because of the structural biases and racism within organisations and within healthcare that prevents individuals from accessing support. So that is another reason why Black Mental Wealth was established alongside a lot of other organisations. And some individuals that I have worked with have shared that they're afraid to share about their mental health and well-being because of fear of being judged or misunderstood. And also it's important to acknowledge that in different cultures, the way that individuals maybe express mental health or well-being or stress is different. So that's something that needs to also be considered when supporting burnout within an organisation. And for some people, they're not going to tell you that they're burnt out. They're not going to say that I'm exhausted. It will come out in another way. So you need to be skilled at asking the questions. And that's where building an organisation that has psychological safety at the foundation is critical, because once there's psychological safety, all employees are going to feel safe about talking about their struggles, and there won't be that fear of embarrassment. So managers and leaders have got to do the work to ensure that everyone, regardless of their difference, whether it's race, gender, sexuality, diversity, whatever, neurodiversity, that everyone feels heard and that they're able to get the support that they need in terms of their mental health and well-being, because everyone deserves to thrive, whether, regardless of your background. But we've got to look at it from that intersectional lens in order for everyone to succeed.
100%. And just tell us the details of the link to your platform, Martina, and we'll drop it in there.
Yeah, so it's www.blackmentalwealth.org. And Brilliant. Then we're on Instagram and other platforms as well.
Fabulous. We'll put it up there. And I'm going to just building on for that. You've built this technology platform to be that force for good. But we've equally talked about previously turning off notifications. But how can we really ensure that we can use technology and apps as a force for good? Any examples out there that you've used, Alicia? Because I've something sits in my mind of something that you've done and worked in collaboration with over at Thrive, or I could be making
Yeah. So we have, on a personal level, completely agree with turning off notifications. I also have Apple has a screen time thing, so I don't get any notifications and I can't access any apps after 9 p.m. I think that's great. Like, it's so helpful, and it's in Apple. You don't have to buy an extra app. They just hide it, because why would they let you do that? So it's there. It's really, really good. So that's my personal one. But at Thrive, we work with Champion Health, who are a company who kind of do risk assessments, mental health risk assessments across our team. We do them twice a year, but we can keep updating them. And then they have access to a platform that kind of personalizes based on the things that you need. So it has things like, when I came back from maternity leave, it had a lot of maternity leave coaching and videos in there. There was a lot of postnatal yoga, things like that, which was great. So it's a really good technology platform in terms of it gives you both individually, it gives every individual their own kind of guidance on where their gaps maybe are, what they should focus on. Are they sleeping properly? Are they eating properly? But then also from a company perspective, which is something that obviously I completely agree with Martina when she talks about setting the right kind of groundwork and talking about actually the company making sure they're investing in these things as well. There's definitely, that's kind of really helpful, because you get studies and reports anonymized on how your team are doing. So they might tell you they're not stressed. But actually, when they do that study, they are stressed. From a psychological safety perspective, that's a worry, because they should feel like they're able to disclose that. But it does help you to be able to identify what those gaps are. Like, we've had clients who've worked with Champion Health and found out they have suicidal employees and had no idea. So it really is helpful in terms of that intervention and figuring out what groundwork you can then set up. Because I always say, like, my old law firm once put apples out in the kitchen as their wellbeing initiative. They gave us all fruit. I remember looking at the fruit and thinking, you have no idea how much fruit we eat. Like, you have no idea if this is actually helping. So it's just an empty gesture. Whereas if you do all that information gathering and kind of figure out what your baseline is, you can do things that actually make a difference.
I remember us doing a panel a few years ago. We did Northern Power Futures, and that was the title of the wellbeing session was that, it is absolutely more than just a bowl of fruit in the staff room. Thank you. Oh, lovely. Elizabeth Cameron has dropped a message in the chat. Loving your response, Miss Martina. So hopefully more use and support of your blackmentalwealth.org platform as well there. Natalie, technology, have you seen that in your in Nuvo, being able to use technology for good?
Good. Sorry. We partner with Optimi Wellbeing. So Optimi is a business-to-business workplace wellbeing solution, and it focuses on stress management, burnout prevention through 6 pillars of wellbeing. And they're passionate about EDI and wellbeing support and making it inclusive to all. So that we have access to that an app, and we fill out questionnaires each month, and it gives us tailored wellbeing support and 24-hour counselling support as well. So it's really, the technology there to support us and the team, and it's tailored and personal to us all.
Brilliant. And I know Bethany, bless her, was due to join us today, wasn't she, on the session, but wasn't able to join us. Martina, how do we broach that conversation with our manager, our bosses, or community, that you just go, you know what, I'm not feeling it? When we talked already about battling those challenges, about admitting that I've got burnout, or admitting that I'm identifying that I could be in that space. But how do we have that conversation? I know you've talked about creating psychologically safe places to work in. Not everyone works in a space like that. So how do we tackle that?
So I'd say initially it's all about self-awareness, doing the work internally with yourself. So it's all about preparation. So before having that conversation with your colleague or your manager, sitting down, giving yourself time, whether it's 5-10 minutes, however long you need, and just identifying what are the key signs or symptoms that you're struggling with burnout. Is it that fatigue? Is it that distance from your job? So having clarity, because once you've got clarity, then you'll be a lot more confident and more able to convey your concerns to your manager or to your colleagues. So what are the signs? How do you know you're struggling with burnout? When did it begin? What is it about the workplace? What is it about your role that is potentially contributing towards burnout? And considering, when was maybe the last time that you felt positive about work? So once you've got that clarity, then it will make it easier for you to convey that, share that with your manager or your colleague. And I would say, I'm all about kind of innovation and doing what works for you. And I share this with my clients that I work with, that I coach and provide therapy to one-on-one. You've got to make it work for you. So if you don't feel comfortable speaking, if you work in the office in person, speaking to your manager in person, then do what works for you. Take a graded approach. So it might be that you want to drop an email initially, because then that may help you to manage the emotions that are evoked as a consequence of it. You might want to send them a message, if that's, if you've got like a work phone, or it might be that you want to book in a Zoom or Teams call as well. So make it work for you. And although I said gather all that information, I still stand by that. However, decide initially what you're comfortable in sharing. Is it just a little bit like someone shared earlier that, I'm just feeling a little bit stressed? If that's all you want to share initially, then that's fine. And then gradually build up to, sharing about the extent of the burnout and how it's impacting upon the individual. But be specific, be honest. And I'd say keep it real. Don't just be candid, be straight to the point, and be very specific, because that's going to enable you to get the support that you need. And try not to be afraid. And I guarantee that probably when you speak to your manager or colleague, they'll undoubtedly share with you that they've struggled with burnout in the past or currently. You know, the figures are so high in terms of burnout in the workplace. I think it's about 75%. So someone you know is going to have struggled with burnout. So it is about normalizing the conversations around burnout, and just even having that conversation is going to help to reduce the load that you're experiencing, because it can also, with that prolonged burnout, if it's not resolved, that can have an impact on your mental health. It can lead to, you know, anxiety, someone struggling with their mood or depression. So it is about taking action sooner rather than later.
And I think it's right what you say about being comfortable with what you're comfortable with sharing. It does, you know, we're all different, aren't we, as well? What do I feel comfortable? I'm going to write it all down. We'll all do it in a different way. And, you know, you took a recent report with AXA, said that stress, burnout, general poor mental health resulted in £23.3 million lost working days across our businesses, which is epic, right? Alicia, I know you work with Thrive with Pregnant Then Screwed, the wonderful Jolie Brearley, who is amazing. How does burnout, you talked earlier about being the mum of a 2-year-old, how does burnout hit not just new parents, but parents generally, and how can we put the spotlight on their well-being?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely a link, isn't there? If we think that burnout is the result of kind of excessive stress to some extent and kind of not feeling that pressure, there's this kind of concept by which something's got to give, right? So if you've got a lot of stress going on with childcare, like for example, Delilah tried to drop her off this morning and she was not happy being dropped off at nursery, and those kinds of things, you carry them with you, but you can't then come into, well, in some organizations, you can't then come into your organization and say, you know what, I've just had a really stressful drop off, so I'm just going to take like 20 minutes to figure out, you know, who the heck I am and that I'm not the most awful parent ever for leaving my child in childcare, and then I'll come back to this. So that's the kind of the psychology, isn't it? But if we think, like, as I say, something's got to give, and it's not going to be that you are a parent, it's going to be, if you can't manage it all, it's going to be your ability to work. And so that's why we've got to think about the spotlight and making sure that parents do feel supported, because if they get to the point where they can't do it all and they can't kind of facilitate everything, they're not going to give up the parenting side. So they're going to start burning out. They're going to start getting to the point where they're negative about work, where it's too much for them to carry, where they feel overwhelmed and feel that pressure. And so it's just generally much more likely, because of that, the nature of the fact that if something has to move, it's not going to be their parenting. And so I think really when we think about putting the spotlight on them, we have to recognize, obviously there are a lot more kind of areas in which there will be additional stress factors, but parenting is certainly going to be one of them, and making sure that they have platforms to kind of articulate what it is that they're going on. So like in Thrive, for example, every single day we do an update in the morning just saying like, this is how I feel today. So my check-in this morning was, had a really, really rubbish drop off. So I'm just going to take like an hour this morning. I'm still online. I'm just not working as fast because I'm just processing that myself. And so making sure that people have those platforms to share those things. If you're in a really big organization, can you set up like a parenting network, especially for new parents? Because when you're coming back from maternity leave, it's been the most stressed I've ever been at Thrive. And it's not through lack of support or through lack of trying. It's just purely that balancing act and that juggling act. And so if you've got that kind of network or the coaching in place already, you've got someone who can go to who says, actually, I thought they were going to be sleeping through by now. They're not, but I still have to work from 9 till 5. How do you do that? And trying to unpick what that looks like. So there's a couple of things really, setting up those networks or coaches, and just making sure that you're giving them the space to talk about how it is impacting them.
Alicia, thank you. And we're in our last minute of this. I don't know where the time goes on these webinars, but what's the one thing that you would say that everyone can either take away, recognize, or reverse in burnout? Martina, can I come to you first? I know it's a toughie, but what's the one thing you want people to take away from today's session?
Oh, there's so many. You're not alone. You're not alone in terms of burnout. Yeah, you're not alone.
Alicia?
Mine's self-care isn't selfish. I just think if you feel like if you feel even slightly like that's something you need, then you probably needed it a couple of days before. So just always bear in mind that you are never wrong for needing to take time to make yourself feel better.
Thank you, Natalie.
I would say remember to be kind to yourself. So treat yourself with the same understanding that you would offer a friend, and just allow yourself that time to rest and recharge regularly.
Love it. Rest, recharge, self-care is not selfish. And Martina, tell me again.
You're not alone.
You're not alone.
You're not alone with burnout, not at all.
Well, we've talked about so much today, whether we're talking about intersectionality, we're talking about the sort of the precursor. It's not just about stress. No one deals with this. No one is on that same path around this. So be kind to yourself. I love my takeaway. I love the whole the writing it down and equally say it out loud, but do something and be physical. I like that as well. Get outside, be active, I think Natalie said as well. So thank all of you for joining us today. Whether you've joined us live or whether you're watching us on catch up, please do keep the conversation going on all of our social channels across We Are Power Family. I think they're all going across the bottom of the screen. It's like a prompt today. Thank you all for joining me. It's been a brilliant conversation. Alicia, Natalie, Martina, you were all brilliant. And please do just remember, this is about you. This is about how you sort of manifest and show up. Ask for help if you need that help. Thank you for your support. And we will see you at next month's webinar.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.